Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Keynote panel talking about successful rollout of your security programs. And I am really excited to host this first panel of the conference. And welcome back to DevSecCon 24. If this is your second time you're here from our first conference last year. Joining me today, we have Wendy Nather from Cisco. We have Tanya Janca from We Hack Purple, and we have Matt Jarvis from Snyk. So a big welcome and thank you all for being here. Now, why don't we go a little bit deeper into some introductions? So I'll ask you each to individually tell us a little bit about yourself. So why don't we start with Wendy?
Okay, I'm Wendy Nather, and I used to be a CISO in the public and private sectors. I was an industry analyst, and I also helped to stand up the retail and hospitality ISAC. And now I work in the strategy office at Cisco with a team of former CISOs and practitioners.
Awesome, welcome. Going to be good to hear from you there. Tanya, why don't we have you next?
Hi, I'm Tanya Janca, also known as She Hacks Purple. And I'm not wearing purple today. I hope you forgive that. And basically, I'm a nerd who's really obsessed with the security of software. And so recently, like a year and a half ago, I started my own company, and we give training on how to do that.
And the company is We Hack Purple as well, right?
And yes, and the company is We Hack Purple. I'm getting the hang of this whole self-introduction.
And so why purple, Tanya? What's Team Purple?
Oh, so I was a dev and then I switched to security and I was a pen tester, but then I kept doing defense things and it turned out I couldn't make up my mind, and it turns out attacking is red team and it turns out defending is blue team, and someone said, oh, you're purple team. Isn't that what AppSec people do, where you kind of have to wear both hats? And before I knew it, I had purple hair. It's not a prerequisite of AppSec though, just so you know.
So yeah, if you want to apply to We Hack Purple, you have to have purple hair, I presume. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi folks. I'm Matt Jarvis. I'm a senior developer advocate at Snyk. So I spend most of my time out talking to developers and other folks about security and really about cloud native security in the most part. I guess I've worn many hats in my career, but I've mainly been building stuff with open source software for a very long time. So I've been in big organizations like IBM and R&D. I've been a CTO. I've been a developer, a sysadmin. I've kind of worn all the hats, really. So long and varied, as you can probably tell from the gray hair.
Well, the hats cover it well, so that's all good. That's all good. Wonderful. And my name's Simon Maple, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. So why don't we jump straight in, and I'll give a very brief introduction in terms of what are the areas that we're going to be focusing on. When we talk about successful rollout of security programs, we're going to be talking a little bit about two aspects of that. One is the depth of rollout, and one is the breadth of a rollout. So we're going to be talking about an individual team, how to roll out a security program to that team. So you wouldn't go all in and expect everyone in the team to be experts straight away. So how do you bit by bit roll that out throughout a single team? And then the second one, the breadth. So once you've succeeded or been successful with a team or a number of teams, how do you then roll that out across the organization and actually have coverage across that org? So let's start with depth, and I'll open out first of all to Wendy and ask, how should we, when we're talking about depth, how do you go about picking the first teams that you want to roll a program out to, and how many teams is the right number, if there is a right number?
Oh, that's such a tough question. Picking the team, honestly, it is whoever we get along with the best. Whoever is. It's very important when you're starting to roll out a program after this to identify linchpins in amongst your peers, the ones who are well respected, the ones who know everybody, the ones who have a lot of influence, the ones who are most receptive to your ideas. And there are going to be some in the executive ranks, and there are going to be some kind of in the grassroots, and you want to hit both sides. You cannot just go to an executive and say, right, they'll just tell everybody to do this and it'll happen. So you have to plant your seeds very carefully and, identify. Sometimes it's not the most critical group, but it's the most security friendly group. I guess I'll put it that way.
And is it an important step, Wendy, in terms of when you pick that first group, how crucial is it that if you make a mistake there, does it wobble the whole program? Is it an important first decision?
It depends on how big the mistake is that you make. But again, this is one of the most difficult social engineering projects that there is. It's not like just getting somebody to click on something. It is, making culture change and getting everyone to accept it. It requires a lot of persuasion and a lot of social work. So hopefully you'll be thinking about this before you start. You're not going to be trying to force anything on anybody. And sometimes it'll take longer than you think. But if you just, gently and steadily continue engaging, and I'll say bribes help, find out what they like and, take them out to lunch or whatever you can do at this distance.
Yeah. Any comments on that? Anyone? Does that ring true for people? Not the bribes bit, but just anything in general.
No, the bribes really rings true. I have baked cookies for work so many times. If you go up to a bunch of devs and you're like, yes, I made some cookies, and I was just wondering if you all want some. Also, I'm going to talk about security. It works.
Exactly. That's what happens. One time I flew back from Switzerland for just a couple of days, and I had just one handbag with me, carry-on. Most of it was Swiss chocolate, and there were like 3 T-shirts in it. And the chocolate was all for the help desk. You do what you got to do.
I mean, I think that point about finding your kind of supporters at the grassroots is super important for any of these kind of transformational projects, right? And I mean, in some ways, we're talking about security projects here, but this the kind of the thinking behind this is not that different from when we transitioned from waterfall to agile, or from old style system administration to DevOps, right? Because they're organizational changes that a lot of people can find frightening, both folks on the ground and C-suite folks. And so finding those support points, I think, is super important. And I mean, if you can find an initial team that's outside of your critical product delivery kind of pipe, then that's probably always a good option as well.
And I think, I totally agree. The grassroots approach is very important. Tanya, I'd love to bring you in here just to talk about that grassroots acceptance, bringing in developers and getting them on board. Because it's one thing telling a developer or telling a group of developers, this is really important, we need you to do this. But in terms of how you actually get developers to buy into the idea and believe the value, what are your strategy suggestions to that?
So I really like what Wendy said, how she said it's the team you get along with the most. And so when she said that, my immediate thought was, yeah, because you've spent all this time building trust with them. And so they know her team, they get along with her because they trust her and her team, that they've got their best interests at heart and they're trying to help them make secure stuff. And so I feel like usually when I try to recruit people at first and get them engaged and get them interested, so building trust is important and building interest. So for instance, having a lunch and learn and saying I'm going to show the new cool security tool. Who wants to come see me smash things with it? And also explaining, so sometimes what security people do is they'll explain the risk, but the sky is completely falling. Do you know what I mean? They'll say, oh, well, it's solar winds. This thing happened because of that. And it's like, well, you know what? We're not solar winds. And we sell, this one product and we love this product and we make these applications to support this product, but we're not as attractive as a candidate for SolarWinds. So if you can try to relate things specifically to your business when you explain stuff. I've also seen some interesting ways that people recruit people. So for instance, one of my clients put, I'm looking for security champions. Do you want to know how to be a champion? Ask me how. And he put it into his signature of his emails. And that was it. And someone's like, what's a champion? And he's like, yes. And he got 2 security champions. And then, of course, the champions are the ones that they work with whenever they do a new proof of concept. Another company that I was working with, the APIs were not as pristine as we would have liked them. And so there was this tool we wanted to show them. And so what we did is the security team played with it first. And we picked a team that, like Wendy said, that they like you. And so what we did is we took one of their 50 APIs and we actually did the SAST on it. So we did code analysis on it already. And then we actually fixed the whole thing, the 2 of us together. And then we showed it to them. We presented it to them. So we're like, hey, we have this new tool and we wanted to show you. And so we did one to show you how it works and walk. So it's like an IDE plugin that kind of corrects you that looks bad. And so we showed them, we're like, see, and then you just do this and then you do that. And it's kind of like, we made a present for you. We know you've been struggling with the API security. And so now we have a tool where you can push all the way left and start where you're at, not where we're at, because we'd come in and pen test it and we just slap their APIs down, and that's a bad feeling. And now we've made it so by the time the API gets to us, we're like, oh damn, now we have to work really hard. And so we made it because it is for them. Does that make sense? And I've seen security teams where they're like, you can figure out how to use it and you can do this, but by making a little proof of concept and showing them, we're like, look, we did this in 4 hours and we figured out a lot of bugs for you, and we can give you a little tutorial, and almost like a gift from our point of view anyway.
I love that, because traditionally security teams, the interactions are more, we found some problems, here you go, and hand off. So this is more I'm providing you value, I'm helping you here, which is a refreshing difference to how security has traditionally been done. How about conversely, any pitfalls, any common things that people have done to which on the face of it may look like it should work, but perhaps we want to avoid for various reasons? Wendy, any thoughts?
I think I love Tanya's example of demonstrating that it can be done, and giving them the first one for free, kind of a taste, and then hooking them. But the other thing is that you really have to walk it through the whole process if you think ahead on things that are going to happen, and have answers for them, because it's not just the remediation of the code. For example, when we were remediating something really big in legacy, one of the requirements of the change control board was that you had to have a documented reason for every code change. Every line of code had to have a documented reason for why you were having to change it, which sounds really good until you get that first 500-page fortify PDF. And, you're having to trace everything, traceability metrics that would take months and months and months. So you have to try to figure out where those pitfalls are and try to solve them ahead of time. Because if you're bringing something to the developers and they go, well, this sounds great, but I know immediately it's going to crash and burn as soon as I finish this part, then you still haven't made it easier for them.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about the support we might need to make these changes, to introduce these programs, Matt, I'll ask you a question which is more focused on the bottom up versus top down approach. Do you absolutely need management or exec support to actually achieve this kind of rollout, or are we really relying upon developers only to adopt this by themselves with the help of the security team?
I mean, I think it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because with my kind of organizational management hat on, you would say, well, we're gonna create some pioneers. And I'm a big fan of this pioneers, settlers, town planners kind of model about all of these things involving these kind of changes. And you would think that would be how you go about it. But I mean, as you know, Simon, we see an awful lot of people coming to us where they're actually, their first thing has been a development team has just gone and done it themselves. And then they've gone, wow, we've got these fantastic results, we're really actually enjoying, having, seeing vulnerabilities getting fixed. And then the organization goes, what's going on over here? And so, so I think there are both ways are kind of valid these days. And we certainly see more developers adopting things almost, off their own bat, or a small team, kind of working that out. I think developers in general are much more aware of the importance of security issues these days. Certainly, over the breadth of my career, it's a radical change over the last 20 years from it being a kind of annoying thing that somebody kind of made you do eventually, but you wanted to avoid as much as possible, to people being much more aware of it.
Yeah, curious as to that last comment as well about things that people are being made to do. And Tanya, back to one of your previous points of, I'd love to ask how, when you did that scan by yourself and gave that gift to the development team, what was the next step? Like, how much are the development teams being part of the decision making of what they should do, what they want to do, how they do it, versus what the security team are like presenting to the development teams?
Well, so with that specific organization, we've worked together on and off for a long time. And so we actually created a standard for secure coding, and then we had held consultations with all the dev teams and got feedback, not as much as I would have liked. And then we said, okay, so now it's a guideline, and then eventually it's a standard. And then we made an API, best practices, this is what we would like you to do. And then again, it was a lunch and learn, and then it was a guideline, and then we're working towards it becoming a standard. And then a lot of them aren't following the standard, but it's new, right? And so, and also basically, like, we just got a demo of a tool. So someone I've known for years started an API security company, and she's like, hey, can I show you this cool thing I built? And I'd seen it a year ago, but gosh, it's come far. And so I was like, what if we tried, this, and then we're just playing around with it. We're like, we love it. It's really easy to use. Like, let's show them and see how it goes. And so they're like, oh, this seems neat. But it was only like last week that we'd gotten that far. But previously with the same company, like, we built, so some of them were using pipelines, some of them weren't. So we started making pipelines for a bunch of them. And then we would put different security tools we wanted them to use into the pipeline. So we made, a proof of concept pipeline. We helped them fix all the things. We got them to a good place, and then we started showing it off to all the other teams. We're like, look what we did with this team. Don't you want to have a cool pipeline like this? And so we made it so they could actually literally copy and paste the YAML to make it the least friction possible. So like, you can literally copy and paste this. If you have a web app and it's doing this, you could just copy it like this. And so slowly it's been like just rolling out, because teams are like, that seems cool. Then we met this one guy who made pipelines, like 20 of them. And so then we showed it to him, and he's like, get out of my way. And then he added it to all of them for us. And so it's been like this grassroots level, even though we have support of the upper management. I'm like, they're the ones that pay me. But basically, like, having the devs be more and more interested and more aware, and they keep doing like more lunch and learns and stuff like that. And just, it's been like an entire culture shift over the past, I guess, year and a half that I've been consulting there. And I consult 1 hour a week. So yeah,
wow, sounds bad. Like a huge impact. So, and that feedback, that cycle of gathering information from developers must be, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, depending on the groups. Let's say we work for a huge company with teams globally distributed. I don't know, Wendy, if you know any of those, but how do you get that feedback, that information from developers at scale across a company like Cisco?
Oh, at scale is really, really hard because as a company gets bigger, it kind of splits into fiefdoms, and everybody has their own culture, their own reasons for wanting to do things. And sometimes you just have to do shuttle diplomacy and go around because even with something as simple as a communication to all of these business units, or departments or geographies. You can't just send one thing. Like at Cisco, when we were rolling out Zero Trust, we had these things that marketing crafted very carefully and wanted to send them out. But every business unit had their own communications people, and they wanted to rewrite it just a little bit each time. So it took forever for the communications to trickle down to everybody. So if you want very close control over the messaging, you have to go deliver it yourself rather than firing it off and just trusting that it's going to scale. Mm-hmm. But and again, the personal touch is a lot better than sending a communique from on high. For some groups, I introduced them to AppSec. I got them together to play Elevation of Privilege, if you know that card game from Microsoft that Adam Shostak came up with a long time ago. It's still there on their site. You can download and print the cards yourself. But the idea is to do threat modeling with everybody. So I made it a card game, and I brought snacks, and this is when we could all sit together. And everybody brought their particular project that they were working on to represent. Usually you all work on just one system together, but I said, bring your own, because I was trying to get a lot of departments together at the same time. And we all played it. And the object there is to identify as many attack paths as you can for your particular project. And whoever does that wins. Now, the sad thing is that whoever wins also has discovered the most attack paths into their software, so they're going to have to go and open a lot of tickets. So everybody gather around and go, oh, we're so sorry. We're really sorry. But, you just try to make it as fun as you can, because as Tanya was talking about, it's really hard to convince them, first of all, that attacks can happen. But even if you show them that they're feasible, they'll say, well, who would want to do that? And that's the other big thing that even the management can't always really answer. So that's a completely different thing entirely. But they will often give you the benefit of the doubt on that second question if you let them take ownership of discovering, what these threats are.
The who would want to do that? That sounded like you've heard that many, many times.
Oh,
as well,
God, so
Tanya as well, and Wendy. Yeah. So why don't we switch across to some examples of that we've all done of rolling something out. What are some of the best practices? And if you have any examples, that would be great. Why don't we stay with you, Wendy, on that?
Best practices of rolling these out. We've already identified a lot of them, and many of them are, if a small team has already discovered something on their own, try to build on it, because then you can hold them up as an example. People love to be shown as an innovator, a pioneer, whatever, and you can say, boy, you are so smart. You just, you figured out part of this problem already. We're just going to adopt this. And again, other best practices are understanding the particular culture of the team. The other thing that not a lot of people think about is that in older organizations where there's a lot of legacy software, all resources for development are very carefully planned, only for the things that are on active development, not for anything that is no longer being developed. Even if you have to go back and remediate it, that's a problem for the CIO and the CTO to schedule everything from left to right in those resources. Take somebody off of an active project to go back and rebuild this code, remediate it, test it for as long as it takes, set up the QA time, set up, everything. And it's not going to be this beautiful, continuous integration thing where it happens 25 times a day. It's going to be old and painful, and it's a business problem just as much as it is a technical problem. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have to work with, a lot more people than you think to go back and schedule those resources.
Yeah. No, very good advice. Any other advice from Tanya or Matt?
I really liked what Wendy said, as per usual. So I tend to try really hard to ask the dev's opinion on things, or the architect's opinion, or the operation folks' opinion. And I think that the main reason is, one, because they know lots of stuff that I don't know. And also because they'll, like, not only will they add value, but also when I talk to them, I find that then they feel appreciated, they feel heard. And also a big sticking point that I've discovered is like what Wendy was saying, is that there's some legacy stuff that's happening, and it's out there. It's still part of your portfolio. You still have to take care of it, right? And they're so worried when you tell them, oh, there's like this API standard coming, or there's this coming or that coming. They're fearful that they won't still have a job, or they're fearful that people will be really angry with them. And I'm like, no, we're a team. I'm here to serve you. So let's make a plan together of how you can get there. It's not like, it comes into force in September and I'm going to run over with a stick and whack your hands. It's let's make a plan that's maybe 6 months or 12 months, or, like a compromise that actually works. I remember the first place where I implemented a secure coding standard, I talked with all the devs, and a lot of them were concerned. I'm like, how about this? All new apps must follow the standard. However, all old apps, we're going to do some compromises. So the deal we came up with was, if you have to fix a bug in one of the old apps, which happened fairly regularly, like you have to run OWASP Zap on it, and you have to fix like a critical thing that you find, or a high thing. You have to fix at least one bug. And then a lot of them, what would happen is they're like, well, I'll just fix all of them. Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh, I'll just fix 2 or 3 or whatever, Tanya. And so every time they would fix a bug, they would be like, well, I ran Zap and there was like this one thing that looked really bad, so I fixed it. And so although it wasn't a perfect solution, and some of the apps still didn't get attention for a while, it brought a lot of them up just a bit, so it was less terrifying, because the first scans were like, but then after a while, the scans were a lot better, and it was good. And we also implemented, so I wasn't allowed to buy anything for the devs. Bribery was totally discouraged there. And so what I would do was give high fives. So it sounds really weird, but I would say, like, if you fix a bug in a legacy app, or if on a new app you scan and you don't have any highs, like criticals, highs, or mediums, if you have fixed all those before it gets to me, when it's my turn and I'm on it, if I don't find any criticals or highs, I'm going to run to your desk, and then I would high five them really loudly. And the high five from Tanya meant, oh, they did a good job. And we had this open floor plan so everyone would see it, and you would hear the, right? And it really, really made a difference. And I remember one of the big executives was over there once, and he saw me kind of trot off to the dev area, high five someone really loudly, and then trot back. He's like, what is Tanya doing? And I'm like, AppSec. But it worked. It created like a much better relationship. To be clear, that place I had been one of the devs and leading one of the devs teams, and then I switched to security, so most of them already knew me, but it created like this positive reinforcement as opposed to like a negative reinforcement, like, you are bad, you did this. It was more like, you're great, you did excellent, thank you.
High five driven security, I love it. It's a
Yeah,
we'll have to trademark that.
I'm a fan of the high five.
I absolutely agree with all that. The one thing I would probably add is over-communicate. If you think you're over-communicating, communicate even more, because I think it's easy to assume that people have heard your message and understood you, and people come and say, well, I didn't know anything about that. But what about the 10 emails and the lunch and learn? Missed them all. So
yeah, cool. Well, why don't we switch? Oh, sorry, Tanya.
Oh, not being in person kind of stinks right now, because the thing that I would do is I would just pretend to have a reason to walk by their desk. And I would be like, oh, hi, I didn't even see you there. And I'd be like, let's talk. But I tried to make it a more friendly thing. Does that make sense? And also, one of the teams I used to work at, we sat right in front of the kitchen, and everyone has to go to the kitchen eventually. And so I'd be like, oh, there he is. I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to make tea right next to you while you're making coffee. And I'm like, can we set up a time to chat?
What would today's equivalent be? I guess just passing someone where close to where they live and giving someone an elbow bump. I guess in today's terms, right? That would be. It's not quite as effective, is it? So why don't we switch and talk rather than focus now on the depth of rolling out to an individual team? Let's discuss about why don't we actually ask that question first? How do we know once we've achieved some level of success, which we've deemed to be successful, which perhaps is another question, but once we've deemed that we are successful within the groups that we are working in, at what stage do we then want to increase the number? How fast should we grow, and should we use the same techniques as Wendy was mentioning? In fact, I'll ask Wendy, when you previously talked about pick the teams that you get on with most as the individuals, do you continue that same flow in your growth? There'll obviously be a limit to that just based on the number of people you'll know in the organization, but what does that growth look like?
At that point, when you have some successes under your belt and you can show that, then successes generally help open other doors for you. And that's when you go back to executive teams and say, we've been doing this here. Here's how we're doing it. Here's how it's working. We've reduced our risk by this much, and try to find how to incentivize them further to make this a part of their objectives going forward. And sometimes you can incentivize them with things that make them really want to sign up, and that's easy. And other times they're like, we're overstretched as it is. Why should we take on something else when we don't even believe that this is a risk that's going to happen? And sometimes you can't win them all. You can't get those. The most you can do is document it and say, we tried. We'll be back in 3 months and ask you again. And then I'm going to keep asking you again. I keep thinking of Tanya now going by. I'm going to walk by your desk again, or I'm going to drive by your house. I'm going to stand, where you go to get your coffee in an inflatable T-Rex suit. And I'm going to ask you again. Well, I do that. I have no pride. But, trying to find those business levers to keep spreading them out. And sometimes you will find that a group is willing to take it on for reasons you wouldn't have anticipated, or, this is not a really critical thing, but it does have a lot of dependencies. And if you manage to do this, this is automatically going to have a network effect, and it's going to fix a lot of other things. Some other things you're going to have to say that they will be saying, oh, we're going to be retiring this, so we're not even going to fix it. And, 5 years go by and they still haven't retired it. But, you do what you can do. Sometimes you take your little 8-ball and just go, okay, who's up for security today? I'm afraid I don't have really good foolproof answers for that, but I bet my colleagues here do.
I mean, I think there's always it's good if you can kind of create internal advocates for any kind of program. Whether that's champions within teams where it's working already, leveraging them because they're the kind of authentic technical voice, right? I mean, it's a much more likely to be a well-received message coming from respected peers in some ways than from, you know, a kind of top-down type approach. So I think leveraging those kind of program champions at the grassroots level and trying to create new advocates and new champions, you know, you get that sort of viral network effect, and I think that's definitely an approach that can work.
I also feel that, so I'm big into data and using data to get my way. So for instance, showing them, listen, we did scans of everything, and these are our top 3 things. And I'm afraid of those things. I've even I have not written that many exploits in my life, but I've even written an exploit to show them, like, I'm really upset about this one specific thing. And so sharing those metrics. So for instance, not specifics, like there's SQL injection in this app, but I remember one client, I'm like, we have 6 active injection problems. This is completely unacceptable. So we worked with those teams and fixed them. Then we talked with everyone about it and did basically a deep dive into that topic about why it's so terrifying and how we did have 6. And now, as far as we know, we have none, but we're going to do a lot more scanning and what they can do to fix it and kind of get their buy-in of the danger that could happen to them. Creating an exploit can really help if there's a specific problem and the one team is just pushing back, or for instance, like some places there's kind of the technical architect people and they set the standard for all the devs. Sometimes you have to battle with them, and I always try to be soft and gentle and nice first, but I have resorted to sending them an email that said, click this link, you've won an iPad. And they're like, Tanya, we know this is from you. And I was like, we have 20,000 employees and one of them's going to click it. So how about you click it and see what happens? And then they're like, wow, that's awful. It looks just like prod. I'm like, that is prod. And then, you know, they're like, well, we didn't think security headers mattered that much and blah, blah, blah. And so we had this nice discussion and they're like, wow, that does seem really bad. I'm like, right? And don't we want to protect our customers? Like, those are our people. Our customers are our people. Like the devs, I don't know if you can remember your dev days, but I loved making my customers happy. And the thought of something bad happening to my customer, it's like, not on my watch, right? So if you can show them, like, this could hurt our customer. It sounds weird, but for me, that was a huge motivator. I'm like, this can't happen to my customer Jen or Brad. Like, those people are counting on me. And so it really helps encourage me. Yeah, definitely. And like sharing the data can help, especially if you see improvements in the data. That's huge. That makes everyone feel awesome. Like, remember how the past 3 months we've been targeting cross-site scripting? Well, guess what? All of our new scans are showing like a nosedive. All of you are amazing. Yeah.
That's so funny. That reminds me of one time that I heard about an application where the developer deliberately used SQL injection to update the database. And I'm sure he thought he was being clever. You know, oh, this is really cool. Let's do it this way. And yeah, we all cried. We cried that day.
Wow.
I think it raises an interesting point, though, doesn't it, about security education in general? That a lot of times when we're taught about security in our kind of work environment, it's quite abstract, right? Oh, CVEs and, you know, this. But when you start showing people real world exploits, you know, people are like, it sort of changes their mindset about it. Even people who are experienced developers, because they've been thinking about it in a fairly abstract way. And then you go, well, let's actually work through this exploit and show what happens. And people go, wow, okay. I kind of hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah.
That is prod. I love that.
Yeah. We need t-shirts. We need t-shirts for sure. So we're pretty much up. That 40 minutes went quick, right? So why don't we finish up with a quick roundup around the houses here? Why don't we just talk about our biggest takeaway here, or best practice that you would recommend that people would try? And I'll start. I think the next time I'm in a coffee shop or in the office by a coffee machine, I want a person in an inflatable dinosaur outfit to high five me. That's my. I feel like that's a life goal now for me. I want that to happen, and that would be amazing. That would be something I would talk to everyone about afterwards. So that's my big takeaway. Why don't we go around? Wendy, why don't you start?
I love that. I think the most, and I am for hire, and I come with my own suit. I think what we've pulled from a lot of this is that you have to go on the journey with the developers. This is not something you can hand down from on high and go, good luck. You have to walk with them. You got to be Sam and go with Frodo. You got to make the whole trip. And that's just a little homage to Sam sitting in the background there. You have to be Sam to your Frodo. How's that?
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. I very much agree with that. Tanya.
I really liked, so I felt all of us brought this up, and Wendy started it, the idea of building trust with the developers and then building on that and then teaching from there and showing them as a glowing example. So we started with this team that knows us and trusts us, that we've worked with a long time, and look at their success and then proliferate from a positive point. Really liked that.
Excellent. And finally, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost exactly what I just wrote down. Become that. You've got to become that trusted voice, and so that on the one hand, and then the other one is find your champions, and especially those grassroots, because they're your most important voices. Like I said earlier, those are that's the kind of the thing that's most likely to win hearts and minds is respected peers. Kind of giving that the support and the story. So
wonderful and great to hear 3 big bits of advice there all around culture. I think that's very, very important. Excellent. Well, Wendy, Tanya, Matt, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on DevSecCon 24. And if a person dressed in a dinosaur does high five you, you're more than welcome to blame DevSecCon 24. Feel free. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference.